here are a few designs that embody what I would call 80s corporate lunar punk. What does that mean, really? In this video, I'll take you behind the scenes of the processes that led to the designs and the aesthetic as a whole, as well as describe the sources of inspiration, some of which might surprise you. Welcome to Technouveau. My name is Rasmus. I'm an art director and concept designer with 20 years of professional games development experience, and I'm on a mission to inspire and empower your creativity by discussing concept design, processes, and all the creative fields that are adjacent to this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, I have a Patreon where you can dive in and support and simply get these videos ad-free as a starter. You can also dive into the mentor community and get much deeper into the grid. I also have Technouveau.net where you can access individual 3D models as well as big chunky asset packs, as well as a little merch just for, this is not my merch, anyway, as well as merch just for kicks. So if you enjoy discussing concept design, if you enjoy the creative process, and if you enjoy diving into what makes us tick and what makes designs work, be it science fiction or otherwise, I'll see you out there. Beyond that, let's get to the video. All right, so if we jump into Blender, you can see this Wasshauser big, medium, small guy standing here in front of some massive wheels. And if we zoom out, you see a big truck. So obviously what dominates this design, I would say, are a few different things. Obviously, at first, it's the massive quad set of wheels here. Absolutely ginormous. The next thing is a sort of simplistic body, elongated body that gives way to a few shapes that are clearly noticeable. The first one being this round airlock, and the second one being its payload, namely these extremely low quality containers that I just slapped in the back here. We'll talk about the actual design of this, how it's built in a little bit. And you'll notice that this airlock and these wheels really create this little triangular shape, Sam Fisher shape, for the gamers out there. And it gives it a nice weight compared to this container in the back. So there's a certain weight to this container for sure, but there's also a certain weight to, not because each element has mass enough to sort of counter this, but because of a visual weight that this triangle here has a lot of strength from a compositional point of view. The next thing is this low slung body that once you rotate the camera around a little bit, you'll see it's quite brutal in its shape. For the nerds out there, you might recognize this as being part of the big, medium, small Modelshop Greebles pack, that I took one of the cockpits, tilted it to the side, and stretched it out a little bit to give this interesting, I think, cockpit shape. It's a really rough assemble, so it doesn't really, let's say it's not elegantly built. It's just smashed together as a design exercise more than a 3D modeling exercise. But I think this shows really well what you can do. And obviously, because this is designed to face upwards instead of sideways, it has this interesting window shape to it that's kind of surprising when you see it from the side. I think this double front windshield is really interesting as well. But anyway, I'm happy that there's a few happy accidents actually in that sense in the design. And on the inside of this, I added some screens and whatnot. So in the tradition of some classic sci-fi, you can really see that there's let's say a crew in here where some people will analyze what's happening on the screen, some people will drive and whatnot. And you can see the texturing here on this one. I haven't even bothered texturing this finish that texturing up yet, because as if you know me, you know that I'm more interested in the design than I am in finishing the model. So what's happening here is it's just a design exercise. If this was to be finished, I would have to go through all that stuff, fix all the texturing, fix all the worst of the kit bash issues and whatnot. But let's carry on with the design analysis. So in the front we have a massive grille. And obviously the thing you see, again, for those of you who know me, you know that I'm obsessed with having interesting off-center design elements in my work. And certainly we have that here as well, namely a big sort of a radar / cannon front-mounted system. and that is to give a bit of a surprise to the design. When you rotate the camera around, you can sort of see that it has that front, but it isn't just in the middle. That would be too easy, I suppose, for my sensibilities. And then we have this little ridge that goes back to the center of this design, which is really the airlock system that gives it this identifiable cylinder in the middle here, back to a crane, which for some reason I've broken in this particular load of the file, strangely. Anyway, I'll just add that. That can then, you can imagine that lifting off the payload. In terms of how it's built, yeah, I took some parts, stretched them out, and I just smashed in the containers into the body. Again, because I'm focused on the feeling of the design as I built it, rather than the modeling. And that's how I sketch in 3D. So rather than building in 3D, which isn't what I'm doing when I'm playing with the Modelshop Greebles pack, I'm just smashing parts. And that allows me to sketch and look for shapes in 3D while not worrying too much about how things are modeled, or is the polygons good. No, I'm even messing up this terminology. I'm really not worried about it, because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a feeling from the design. On the bottom, I imagine we have a suspension system that we know. Again, you can see that there's no springs or anything here. It's just these arms, just to get a rough estimation of the shapes. Over here in the front, something that feels like disc brakes from a massive treaded vehicle or something. Some classic metallic beam bars to prevent damage, and then a hyper complicated pneumatic system here, where I imagine that the entire subframe and the body itself are two separate systems, and they can sort of fluctuate. And if I had rigging and animation skills, I would love to see this bounce along on a desert earthly surface, or indeed a lunar or Martian surface, because I certainly see this as being an off-world truck. Again, really hammered home here by what is clearly an airlock. Obviously, I stole this airlock from one of my Star Wars inspired ships, and you can see I have some stretchy textures there. But again, it doesn't really matter at this stage in the design, because I am again looking for the feeling first and foremost. If we zoom out, we can see, yes, it is certainly wheels and this rather simplistic body. And here is the cylinder, and it aligns really well with these wheels. So it has actually, that's the iconography of this design, is really this triangular design that sort of crosses the center axis of the ship. So the paint job on this one is what really sets it apart from most of my other design work, where this is where sort of the character of this particular design comes through. And of course I have graffiti here on the back. It's white and blue, so it's certainly not hiding from anybody, yet it has a cannon up here. What the hell is going on with that? I think there's a bunch of flavors here that we should unpack. So to understand what that means, we really need to go back to 1979 and the Alien movie, the famous Alien movie from Ridley Scott, where we really experience a sci-fi location, but seen from the perspective of the working class. And in many respects, you can say that the corporate war between the company and the crew of the Nostromo is sort of a proto cyberpunk piece, in that it is the little guy against the giant conglomerate, obviously through the lens of cosmic horror. It really focuses in on the crew. Here we see the crew in their gear and everything, and here Lambert and Ripley skeptically assessing a situation, probably from Captain Dallas and whatnot. And what is really clear with this is the working class nature, not only the uniform and the emblems and all that stuff, but also the customization of said uniform, right? That the atmosphere is so relaxed that time passes and you modify and you customize. And in a sense, this whole custom crew flavor, which Cameron really passed on for Aliens, and certainly perfected in in the Abyss, and then later Michael Bay took over and really hammered home in Armageddon and whatnot. The sense of being on the side of the working class against a larger world is a super realistic and really cool take on the classic science fiction genre. Peter Hyams really carried on this trope early on in the 80s with Outland in 1981, where it is clear that the inspirations are, at least from an aesthetic point of view, are alien. And again, we have the workers and the policing, Sean Connery here, dressed in a way that is very relatable and very grounded in this base in the orbit around Jupiter, if I remember correctly. And so here as well, this notion of relatability through the eyes of the worker. And funnily enough, he did 2001, the year we made contact, in 1984 as well, which certainly carried on that same aesthetic. And it's quite clear that from 1969's 2001 A Space Odyssey, which had a late 60s futuristic minimalism to it, that 2010 certainly was a product of the Ridley Scott-born aesthetic of Blade Runner and Alien and all that, meaning it was a complicated aesthetic, and again headed up by Sid Mead, doing the exteriors and interiors for the Soviet ship. And really core to this aesthetic, again, similar to all the other ones, is the relatability of the working class and the relatability of things that feel like they're on the verge of breaking, and where the complexity of the systems at play in the fantasy are certainly on display in walls and ceilings and with screens and whatnot. And so that's really where the core of this design thinking that I'm showing you today was laid. However, an early example, as you can see here from me, is this commercial space shuttle craft. This is a concept I did 10-15 years ago, and in terms of credibility, I think obviously it looks like an airplane. It looks like a high-tech airplane, but an airplane nonetheless. It has this simple cockpit. I think it's maybe a photo bash from a Sea Stallion or something. It looks like a freight plane. It has wings that are recognizable, like from a commercial aircraft. It has engines, 4 engines here for atmosphere. And then it has this very iconic heat tiling around the front and the wings and all that, obviously inspired by the classic design of the space shuttle that the Americans were using in the 80s. So there's certainly a bunch of relatable design choices on this one. Another thing you'll notice is the iconography for the sponsors or whatever. So like Formula One or rally cars or whatever, that you have these companies that are backing whatever project this is, as well as some striping down the side. I'm not sure what AU stands for, but we can imagine companies going into space. And so what I think this really speaks to is this, it's a technological fascination, obviously. It's a technological relatability in terms of these engines. It almost looks like a classic McDonnell Douglas airplane or something. And yet it is that slight push towards the futuristic, with both the context within where this aircraft finds itself, namely a commercial context, as well as a mechanical futurism that is ever so slight. It's just pushed a little bit, where maybe you have jet engines to get up to get airborne and up into, let's say, 15-20 kilometers altitude, and then maybe you have some scramjets or some ramjets or some other type of orbital engine taken over. So this design is really an old take on some of the similar thoughts I'm describing to you guys today, where it's all about a credible but also let's say somewhat nostalgic look at what futurism could be. So how I came to this truck you just saw is I did this one, which is another quite old Blender take, where I'm doing this massive truck. It almost feels like it could belong in a gypsy comic, if you recall that comic from the 90s, or Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, some sort of a near future LA or California, dusty California. Which highway would this drive on? I'm not really sure, but it's certainly bigger than a missile truck cab. Yet it exists in a world of busted up diners and trucker with the suspenders. So it has this funny, let's say, naive, retrotastic flavor, and I really enjoyed making the paint job and giving it this super classic North American truck aesthetic. I had a great time with that. And so what I did was I simply took this texture set that I had from that truck there with graffiti and everything. You can see intelligent graffiti artists over here trying to have some fun. And the CO2 boys are back, for those of you who are familiar with those. And again, these stripes that you recognize from trucks of the 70s and 80s. And so I simply took that texture and placed that onto the truck cab here. And as I mentioned, this truck is really made from parts from the Big Medium Small Modelshop Greebles pack, which certainly has a Modelshop-y, Star Warsian 80s kitbashy look to them, which means it's all plating and it's all gunk and it's all wear and tear. And this particular color scheme is certainly different from that, and giving it that a different nature. And so that's really how these things came together with the aesthetic of the working class in a science fiction setting. So another take on this was this one, which is another ship that I made for I made to look familiar to a Star Wars universe, and I added a slight variation of that texture you just saw onto this ship. If we open that in Blender, you can see that some of you might recognize this from an earlier video showcase where I show it as a bounty hunter ship, and that's where this one started. Did a quick texture of it and just applied that really roughly. You can see I added a chrome as well, and I just divided the model here. So again, it's not about perfect resolution, it's not about modeling, and it's not really about getting to something that would hold up, let's say in a show or in a game. At this point, it's a style exercise that is intended to make me understand how I feel about a particular paint job on a shape and how that can become a thing, which is exactly what I'm explaining to you now. So what I'm doing is I'm applying it with the bare minimum effort to give it, let's say, these rounded shapes around the engine cowl here and down the side, as well as along the side here. And then I go into the texture. I go into the texture here, and I adjust these elements. I can't show you because there's no layers here, but I adjust the text and the graffiti, scroll it back and forth a little bit until when I apply it on the craft, that the text appears here and the graffiti appears here, and that the blue lines sort of meet in the middle. So I'm just back and forth scrambling a little bit, and the flag as well, to give a really rough estimate of that feeling. Nothing is final, nothing is intended to be final, but I certainly get a full feeling looking at it. So what I'm exploring here is not the result, but the initial feeling that can become a thing. So the fact that it is chrome on the bottom, white on the top, and it has this no longer a truck paint job, but maybe more, well, I guess you could be a transport van or something. And then we say Aerodyne here, so it feels like Aerodyne is going somewhere and has been going somewhere for a while. Yet maybe finances are not what they used to be, and they're storing the ship in a atmospheric hangar or something. And then some of those punks from the moon base or whatever, they're up to no good again, and they've been painting on it. Or maybe that's when landing on the Earth. I'm not really sure because I haven't told the story yet. We could certainly also add heat tiling on this particular body. So what would happen if you add commercially earthbound graphics on what would otherwise be a Star Wars design? Maybe you add heat tiling, maybe you remove the wings and some of the worst offenders from an aerodynamic perspective, namely the little blinders here. Maybe, I don't know, but adding those elements onto this design certainly gives quite a unique feeling. And as I was experimenting with the truck and with this one, sort of a bubbly, inspirational feeling appeared in my gut, and I got really happy and really excited. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And it struck me that it's really about the hyper optimism of the 80s in which I grew up, and of course I saw the space shuttle get launched, and the sensation that space was just at our doorstep, and at our doorstep with the impeccable graphic design of, certainly Americans are really good at graphic design for their companies, and here I'm thinking both NASA, I'm thinking about sports teams, I'm thinking about referees in sports, I'm thinking about a UPS van, which is an ugly van, but that clarity of the color scheme and the uniforms and all that stuff has a super iconic presence. So that bubbly optimism of the 80s, and especially America's 80s, where anything could happen, I think that's what I tapped into. So yeah, from space shuttles, but certainly also toys, such as, for instance, Lego space sets from my youth, as well as Playmobil, and maybe even some of these hardcore sets that were rumored to exist here at G.I. Joe Space Shuttle. And actually, the funny thing is, you can sort of recognize the Venture star in this design. So again, a little bit of a nod to reality in there. But this whole design idea and this whole approach really got me going. So I couldn't stop. Here we have the Aerodyne logo that you see on this particular ship, from a non-existing 80s ambitious company. There's a little bit of Airwolf in this logo, obviously, Aerodyne Trans-Atmospheric. And I had a lot of fun with these, and this sense of kitting up in your corporal wear and just going to make some money and get the bonus. So in a sense, some of the same challenges as they face in Alien, but certainly with a more positive outlook than the dystopic outlook that they have there. Mars transit systems. Maybe this could be a bus route. You go to work to Mars. Blue for Earth, red for Mars, right? Something like that. Again, feels very American, very sporty. Had a lot of fun with this one. And one of the earlier ones, again, a straight call out to one of our favorite movies, right? Antarctica Traffic Control. Antarctica Space Traffic Control. Obviously, I don't have to tell you where that's from. And I figured, what would a logo patch look like for those guys? Working on either the big dish, I suppose, in Antarctica, or maybe some of the orbital relay stations they might have, all the way to Cromwell orbital elevators. Right, so having this sense of 80s optimism, I guess before you grow up and realize everything is gray and scary and complicated and whatnot. And this optimism is something I was really excited about, and it made me feel really good. So, and certainly coming back to the truck here, again, I'm telling you that it's inspired by, it has sort of a toy-like naivety to it, and that's why it has balloon tires. There's no metal frame tires. There's no strange lunar buggy metal shovel tire weirdos here. This is basically like a Ferrari with the balloon tires from the 70s, right? It's a big truck tire, and I think it gives this particular truck sort of a certain naive flavor that I really like for what the intended design is supposed to make me feel like. I think when I was doing it, I didn't have a formulated path here for naivety, but it sort of happened, and I liked the fact that it had these big balloon tires, and I think over time it sort of became key to this flavor of this particular universe. And yeah, so that's really a naive, positive spin on what I guess you could call 80s corpo lunar punk or something like that. It is this toy-like approach, optimistic approach to a playful yet grimy and dangerous spacefaring corporate humanity. If you want to check out the ship design of the Star Wars inspired ship that gave birth to the Aerodyne ship we just saw, you can check the video on the left. And if you want to give me a follow, you can do so on the right. See you next time.